Hey, I am Hussein here to gently guide you through the slow, quiet corners of history, the kind that's perfect for drifting off. So grab your blanket, close your eyes, and let's get comfortably bored together.
Hey there. Welcome back to The Sleepy Historian, where we dive into the darker, colder corners of history. Tonight, we're lighting a candle and stepping into a world of frost, famine, and firewood. You're about to experience something people in the past didn't just read about, they endured it. We're heading back to the medieval era, and trust me, by the end of this, you'll be hugging your heater a little tighter. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath. Imagine everything fading into black. The warm glow of electric light, gone. The hum of your fridge, the buzz of your phone, gone too. What you're left with is the wind, cold, sharp, relentless. You've just woken up in a small timber-framed cottage somewhere in 14th century England. The fire burned out hours ago, and the chill has seeped into your bones. Your breath fogs in the air above you, and your fingers are stiff before you've even left the bed. Assuming you even have a bed. If you're lucky, and I mean really lucky, you're wrapped in a coarse woolen blanket next to your family. All of you, packed like spoons in a drawer. Not for love or warmth, but for survival. The walls are thin, the roof leaks, and everything, absolutely everything, smells of smoke, sweat, and mold. There's no insulation, no glass in the windows, just oiled cloth or thin wooden shutters barely holding back the wind. The day begins before the sun rises, because firewood doesn't chop itself and snow doesn't clear just because you wish it away. If you're a peasant, and odds are you are, winter means work. Harder, hungrier, colder work. Outside, the snow is crusted and dirty. The sky is dull and heavy. Your boots are little more than stitched leather sacks, and the icy ground bites at your soles like needles. There's no concept of a snow day. There are no puffy jackets, no thermal socks, just layers of rough linen and wool, and even those are riddled with holes from years of use. Your fingers are already going numb as you reach for the axe. It's not just about staying warm, it's about not dying. Because if the fire goes out and the frost creeps in, people don't just get uncomfortable, they perish. Now imagine feeding a family through this. Most food was grown or stored months ago. If the harvest was bad, and it often was, the pantry is nearly bare. No fresh fruit, no vegetables, just dried peas, coarse bread, maybe some salted pork if you're fortunate, and root vegetables stored in the earth. Forget about treats. Forget about seconds. Meals are meager, repetitive, and cold. And water? It's frozen. You're melting snow or breaking the surface of a crusted over well, praying it isn't contaminated. You might be asking, why not just stay inside? Oh, if only it were that simple. Inside is no sanctuary. The hearth, the center of every medieval home, is smoky and dangerous. Chimneys? Not in most homes. That fire you need so badly to survive? It could blind you with smoke or burn your house down with a single spark. The smoke hangs low, choking and thick. Children cough. The elderly wheeze. Your lungs sting every time you inhale, but without the fire, you won't make it through the night. And the nights, oh, they're long. In the dead of winter, darkness lasts up to 16 hours. With nothing to do but sit and wait, families huddled around fading embers, trading stories, singing hymns, or praying for the sun to return. Sleep doesn't come easy. Not in a cold house with a leaking roof and rats scratching in the straw. Not when your stomach growls and the wind howls. And when it does come, it's often broken into two parts. First sleep and second sleep. In between, people might get up, stoke the fire, check on the livestock, or just lie there, staring at the darkness. You haven't even made it halfway through the day, and already you're aching, starving, and half frozen. This wasn't a fluke. This was normal. And just when you think it can't get worse, you remember, there's still January. And February, and March. You drag yourself out into the yard again, where the livestock are restless. Their breath clouds the air, thick and frantic. The cows low nervously, and the chickens huddle together in a frozen panic. They're just as cold and hungry as you are. Feeding them means scraping together scraps of hay you rationed weeks ago. There's no backup supply, no grain truck on its way. If they die, you don't just lose milk or eggs, you lose life support. And if one gets sick, you're not calling a vet. You're watching helplessly as your family's fragile survival unravels, all because of a cold snap and a weak calf. You're constantly calculating risk. Do you burn more wood now to stay warm? Or save it for tonight when the frost really creeps in? Do you eat the last carrot, or hope it stretches one more day? Everything is a trade-off, a gamble. And if you think you're heading into the forest to gather more firewood, think again. The trees are miles away. The roads are slick with ice, and if you slip and break a bone, well, medieval medicine has little to offer you except prayer and maybe some leeches. In towns, winter takes a different shape, but no less cruel. The cold crawls through narrow alleys and into stone buildings where the poor huddle together for warmth, overcrowded rooms, damp with breath and mildew. Diseases thrive here, not just the cold, but things like influenza, pneumonia, even typhus. And without proper sanitation, waste piles up. Buckets filled with human excrement are dumped out into streets where it mixes with slush and rot. The gutters reek, the cobblestones become treacherous, slip in the wrong place, and you're not just wet, you're infected. You can try lighting candles, but wax is expensive and precious. You can try sealing off doors with cloth or straw, but the wind always finds a way through. And God forbid it rains. The freezing kind that turns to sheets of ice on your roof and seeps through the rafters, drip by drip, like some kind of Chinese water torture. It's not just your body that suffers. Your mind starts to fray. The monotony, the gnawing hunger, the hours of darkness that never seem to end. In some villages, people spoke of winter madness, a slow unraveling of the senses when you're trapped indoors too long, too cold, too silent. Even religion reflects this. The church calendar was designed around winter hardship. Fasting periods, candlelit vigils, saints for protection against frostbite and famine. People prayed not for miracles, but for survival. The wealthy, they didn't escape winter's grip either, just experienced a different kind of struggle. Sure, they had larger homes, more food stored in pantries, servants to haul wood and tend fires. But castles were made of stone, and stone holds cold like a sponge. The grand halls echoed with wind, the tapestries barely enough to block the draft. Even royalty wore fur-lined cloaks indoors and slept under mounds of pelts. And what did all their wealth buy them? Boredom, isolation, fear of rebellion, fear of illness creeping in through the servants' quarters. So they feasted, lavish spreads of salted meat, dried fruits, spiced wine, more to feel alive than out of hunger. And yet, with all that, they still suffered from chilblains, swollen, red, aching extremities caused by constant exposure to cold. Their fingers blistered, their toes cracked. Nobility was no shield from nature. Imagine being a child during this time. Your world is reduced to a few dark rooms and your parents' tired faces. You don't play outside, you survive. Your hands are raw, your stomach hurts. You dream of spring like it's a mythical land far, far away. And when you're sick, there's no comfort, no medicine. Just herbal infusions, whispered prayers, and the hope that your fever breaks before your spirit does. The medieval winter wasn't just a season, it was a second enemy. One that returned every year to test you, to see what you had left, to take what you couldn't afford to lose. So when someone in the village dies, and someone always does, there's no elaborate ceremony, just a simple wooden coffin, a prayer, and a hurried burial before the ground freezes too hard to dig. Grief has to wait until spring. There's no time for it now. And still, the routine continues. Water must be boiled, meat must be salted, snow must be cleared from the thatch roof before it collapses under the weight. The animals have to be kept alive, the fire stoked, the children wrapped in another layer of wool, even if it itches. You might be wondering, did anyone thrive in this season? Strangely enough, yes. Because while winter was a horror for most, it was also a time of closeness, of storytelling, of family pressed together under the same blanket, sharing tales of warmer days, of craftsmen perfecting skills by candlelight, of communities huddling in churches, not just for prayer, but for warmth, for music, for something that felt human. And slowly, ever so slowly, the days would begin to lengthen again. A few extra moments of sun, a bird call in the trees, a thawing trickle of water. But not yet. You're still deep in the grip of medieval winter, and the night ahead is colder than the last. You wake to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but that hollow, eerie kind that hangs heavy before the wind stirs or something cracks. Your breath fogs in front of you. The fire burned low sometime in the night. You don't remember falling asleep, only the ache in your limbs and the weight of the cold pressing against your chest. There's a strange stillness outside, broken only by the distant howl of wind threading through the trees like a warning. Someone has to get up. So you do. And that first step on the cold earth floor is like walking on knives. Your toes scream in protest. You curse the cold under your breath and shuffle toward the fire pit. The embers are nearly dead. You prod them gently, praying a spark catches. If it doesn't, you'll have to restart it from scratch. If that fails, someone will have to venture out into the woods to beg a flame from another family. Fire is shared, but begrudgingly, especially when everyone's desperate. Your fingers are stiff, clumsy, barely capable of wrapping around the kindling. Eventually, the fire sputters back to life. You warm your hands, but the smoke makes your eyes water. Still, you're grateful. This is survival. This is the tiny victory that lets you live one more hour in the medieval winter. You glance at the others still curled under blankets and straw. Your family, maybe a neighbor's orphan, maybe a grandparent who hasn't spoken in days. It's always like this. Everyone packed into one room. No privacy, no quiet, just breathing and coughing and the occasional sob in the dark. And now it's time for the morning routine. Though calling it a routine feels generous. Water is frozen in the bucket. You have to crack the surface with a hammer or a rock just to draw a ladleful. It's too cold to drink, but it's what you've got. No filters, no heating, just icy metallic tasting water and a cracked ceramic cup. Breakfast? If you're lucky, maybe there's some hard bread left over. Not fresh. Nothing's fresh this time of year, but edible. You soften it with warm water or weak broth. Maybe there's some lard to spread. Maybe a few dried apples, wrinkled and leathery from storage. Meat is a luxury you can't imagine today. For the wealthy, it's another story, but not quite the feast you might imagine. Their larders are stocked, yes. There might be salted beef, smoked fish, even imported wine. But preservation methods are primitive. Everything tastes faintly of ash, mold, or vinegar. And the fear of spoilage always hangs over the table. In their halls, servants rise before dawn to stoke hearths in every room. Water is hauled upstairs in iron buckets, beds warmed with heated stones. But even here, cold seeps through thick stone walls. Drafts curl under ornate doors. And rats, always rats, scurry beneath tapestries in search of crumbs. And outside, the world is bleak. The snow isn't pristine like you might imagine. It's gray, packed down by carts and boots. Blood-stained near the butcher's yard. Slushy with waste in the town streets. There's no cheerful winter cheer, just frozen misery under a flat white sky. You might think of stepping outside for a moment of fresh air, but your shoes are soaked from yesterday, still stiff and crusted. Your cloak is thin, and your body is already aching from yesterday's labor, chopping wood, hauling water, mending a fence that won't survive the next storm. Even children aren't spared. They're not building snowmen, they're collecting kindling, helping their mothers stir pots of stew, or crouched near the hearth trying to sew with frozen fingers. Toys? Maybe a carved bit of wood, maybe a rock. Entertainment is stories, passed down by the firelight, tales of spirits and wolves and the hunger that walks on two legs. Because yes, hunger becomes a thing. It stalks your home. It grows louder every day you open the cupboard and find nothing new. You begin to ration instinctively, hoarding bits of stale crust or a few beans. You count your sacks of flour like they're treasure. And worst of all, there's no end in sight. Spring isn't just far off, it's mythical. You don't have a calendar to tell you how long winter will last. You measure time by frost on the windows, by how much wood is left in the shed, by the weariness in your bones. There's a term people use, the hungry months. It begins after the Yule feasts, when supplies begin to vanish. February, March. These are the cruelest. The fields are dead, the animals thin, and the roads impossible. This is when people break, when they eat what's not meant to be eaten, bark, straw, leather. In some cases, worse. So people turn inward. They retreat into silence, into prayer, into dreams. They sleep more, not out of laziness, but out of necessity. Less movement means less energy spent. Entire families might remain huddled in the same position all day, conserving warmth, speaking only to ask if the fire needs feeding. And through all this, the wind never stops. It moans in the trees like a forgotten spirit. It seeps into your bones. It steals your breath. And still, you endure. Because that's what winter demands. You don't conquer it. You survive it. The snow hasn't stopped in days. It's no longer beautiful. It's oppressive, heavy, suffocating. Every morning, it presses tighter against the wooden walls, piles higher around the door, makes your roof creak like it's begging to collapse. You listen for those creaks now, like warnings, like whispers from the beams above. You've started to feel it too. The ache in your joints, that chill that never leaves your fingertips, the sluggishness in your thoughts. It's not just the cold. It's something deeper, something older. Winter's true weapon isn't frostbite or starvation. It's despair. And that despair grows heavier when someone falls ill. There's no escape from it. If one person coughs, everyone hears. If one person runs a fever, everyone knows. There's no isolation, no medicine that actually works. Not the way you'd hope. You might crush some herbs, burn sage, whisper a prayer in Latin, or whatever you half remember from the village priest. But at the end of the day, you're just hoping, waiting, watching someone suffer beside you and knowing you can't help. The air inside is thick, not warm, not cozy. Thick with breath, sweat, and the faint, ever-present scent of mold. You keep the windows shut tight if you have any. You stuff rags in the cracks. You burn anything that'll catch. Dried moss, bark, scraps of cloth to keep the fire alive. You're coughing too now, but you don't say anything. Everyone coughs. It's winter. Outside, the village looks abandoned. Snowdrifts lean against doors like barriers. Smoke curls slowly from the few chimneys still burning, rising into the gray sky like fragile signals. We're still here. No one visits anyone unless it's urgent. People vanish for days at a time, and you're left to wonder if they're still alive. And then, sometimes, someone knocks. You hesitate. Because a knock in winter isn't just a neighbor saying hello, it's someone asking for help. Or worse, someone looking to take what little you have left. You've heard stories. Desperate people, starving people, a mother whose children froze, a man who burned his floorboards to survive. You're not sure which stories are true anymore, but it doesn't matter. In winter, fear makes its own truth. You open the door anyway. It's an old man, maybe from the edge of the village. His beard is crusted with frost, his eyes sunken. He holds out a small sack of turnips, shriveled, almost useless, in trade for some firewood. You agree before he finishes speaking. Because even if your own stores are low, turning him away would feel like a death sentence. And no one wants that on their soul, especially when the church bells are silent and the earth is too frozen to dig. There's this saying people used to whisper back then: the ground doesn't forgive in winter. They meant it literally. It's too cold to bury the dead. If someone dies now, their body stays inside for days, sometimes longer, wrapped in cloth, pushed into a corner, with prayers muttered every night to keep their soul from wandering. The children are told not to look, but they always do. And the animals? If you're lucky enough to have them, goats, chickens, maybe a half-starved pig, you're guarding them like gold. They're your food, your warmth, your chance at spring. But they're hungry too, and sick. You feed them scraps, spoiled grain, anything you can. The chickens have stopped laying. The goat's milk has gone thin. You think about butchering them, but you hold off. Not yet. Not unless you have to. Every decision now feels like a game of survival chess. Use this too early, and you might not make it through the next week. Wait too long, and someone suffers. You ration food by instinct, by prayer. You scrape the last bit of fat from the cooking pot with a sliver of bread. You dream of onions. You fantasize about eggs. And still, no end in sight. The calendar doesn't matter. The festival dates are only guesses. Candlemas? Maybe last week? Maybe tomorrow. The church hasn't rung the bells in days. The priest is sick too, or gone. You spend more and more time wrapped in your cloak, your hood drawn, face shadowed. Everyone starts to look the same, hunched, pale, eyes dark with fatigue. Even laughter sounds strange now, like it doesn't belong. But then there's the sound. A bird, sharp, brief, a single chirp somewhere near the eaves. You freeze, because in this world, in this dead season, a bird call is a miracle. It might not mean spring is coming, not yet, but it means something has survived. And in that moment, something in you stirs. A tiny flicker of hope, like the embers in the fire pit, like the whisper of warmth in your frozen ribs. You don't speak it aloud, that would break the spell. But for now, for today, you sit a little straighter. You hold the ladle a little firmer, because no matter how brutal the medieval winter may be, you are still here. The days are blending together now, not because time is passing, but because the world has stopped changing. The same gray skies, the same endless stretch of white and silence. Every morning feels like the one before it, and every night arrives too quickly, stretching long and black and cold. You've taken to counting small things just to stay grounded. How many logs you have left, how many spoons of flour, how many times the wind howled through the cracks in the wall while you tried to sleep. That bird you heard, it hasn't returned. But the memory of it keeps you going. Your boots are starting to fail. The stitching's loose, the soles are worn thin. You try to patch them with twine, with scraps of hide, but it barely holds. And every time you step outside, to check the roof, to break ice from the well, your toes go numb a little faster. Frostbite doesn't announce itself. It creeps in, slow and quiet, like a thief in the night. And no one talks about it until it's too late, until someone loses a finger or a toe, until someone's foot turns black and stops feeling pain altogether. You warm your hands near the fire again, always the fire. It's become the heart of your existence. You feed it like a child, nurse it when it's weak, speak to it when it flickers low, almost like it's alive, your last loyal companion in this long and brutal season. Then the wolves return, not to the door, not yet, but you hear them again, in the distance, howling at something unseen, or maybe at nothing at all. It's hard to tell if they're closer than before. Sound carries strangely across frozen fields. But the dogs bark more now if you have them, and you keep a blade near the door, not for people this time, but for what watches from the tree line. And then, something happens that changes everything. The snow stops. Not for long, not forever, but enough that you notice. The silence shifts. The air smells, thinner maybe, like the storm has paused to take a breath. You step outside, squinting against the pale light, and for the first time in weeks, you see the sun, barely, faintly, like a ghost behind thick clouds. But it's there, and for a few precious minutes, the cold feels survivable. That's when you realize how strong you've become. Not because you're thriving, you're not. You're exhausted, hungry, a little hollow-eyed, but you're still alive, still moving, still thinking. You've learned to ration food like a merchant, fix clothes like a tailor, patch tools like a blacksmith. You've become everything at once because winter demands it. And when the neighbor's boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, comes to your door with red cheeks and frozen tears, asking if you have extra tallow for their last candle, you give him some without hesitation. Not because you can spare it, but because you know exactly what it feels like to sit in the dark and wonder if you'll wake up in the morning. Everyone is holding each other up now, whether they say it or not. The walls between homes are thin, sometimes literally. People shout to each other across courtyards, share news, share warnings. A cow gave birth in the next village. A fire took a roof near the mill. The priest is back on his feet. The blacksmith's daughter finally shook her fever. Each whisper of news is like a thread in a tapestry, a reminder that you're part of something larger, something stubborn, something clinging to life in the face of relentless cold. You start to remember stories your grandmother told. Superstitions about how to survive this kind of season, burying a coin under the threshold, leaving bread out for spirits, singing old songs on the longest night of the year. You don't know if any of it matters, but you do it anyway. Not because you're afraid of spirits, but because it gives you something to believe in. Because belief in anything is another form of warmth. And warmth is the only thing the winter can't take without a fight. You notice strange things too, like how quiet everything has become, not just outside, inside your mind. There's no room for worry about the future, no space for regrets, just the present, the next meal, the next log on the fire, the next breath. Maybe that's the strange gift of the medieval winter. It strips away everything until you're left with the core of yourself, your instincts, your rituals, your will to continue. You become smaller, maybe, simpler, but in some strange frozen way, more real. And so, as the wind picks up again and snow begins to fall, you don't panic, you don't weep, you simply return to your fire, sit beside it, and wait. The storm is not over, but neither are you. Something shifts in your sleep. Not the kind of dream shift that leaves you guessing whether you're awake or not. No, something in the world itself has changed. You wake with your back sore from sleeping too long in one position, your breath misting faintly in the air. The fire's gone out, but the room isn't as cold as it should be. There's a stillness, not the kind that means danger, but the kind that means something's holding its breath. You step outside to check the sky, and there it is, an unfamiliar warmth in the light. The clouds are thinner, the air sharper but not biting. The snow is melting, not fast, but enough that you can hear water dripping somewhere near the eaves. For a moment, you just stand there, listening, watching, like the world is offering you a single rare pause. Not hope exactly, but the suggestion of it. But medieval winters are tricky. They do this sometimes, offer warmth like a hand, then snatch it away with a blizzard the next day. So no one relaxes. You don't pack away your winter tools. You don't stop rationing. You simply make a mental note. We're closer now. The village stirs in small but unmistakable ways. Someone's chopping wood again. Children laugh in the distance. Not much, just a short burst, then silence again. A dog barks once and isn't hushed. These aren't signs that winter is over. These are signs that people remember it won't last forever. Inside, you busy your hands, rewrapping the leather around your tool handles, checking the grain sacks again. The flour is almost gone. The root cellar has shrunk to a few onions, 2 shriveled apples, and something unidentifiable you've stopped looking at. You chew more slowly now, not out of manners. Who has those in winter? But to make it last. Meals are rituals now. Warm broth, even thin, feels like a blessing. You hold the bowl close to your face and inhale the steam like a scent you want to keep forever. The priest visits. He walks from house to house with a wooden cross and a clove of garlic in his pouch, muttering blessings and asking who's fallen ill. You don't ask him for miracles. You just want to know what's happening. Whispers travel with him. Someone's cow died giving birth. Someone else slipped on ice and broke a leg. And the healer says there's nothing to be done. Winter doesn't just take food. It takes people, too. You've lost neighbors. Maybe friends. Maybe someone in your own home. Death in winter isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, efficient. One morning they're breathing, the next they're not. Wrapped in blankets, their face turned away like they were just too tired to go on. And the ground is too hard to dig graves. So bodies are kept in sheds, in barns, in corners of cellars, wrapped in cloth and straw, waiting for the thaw. It's not gruesome anymore. It's just part of it. Another thing to endure. But you endure it together. That's the strange part about medieval winters. As isolating as they are, they also bind people. The shared struggle for heat, for food, for life, it strips away pretense. Lords and peasants alike fight the same frost, burn the same wood, fear the same wind. And those who make it through, they carry each other's stories. In the evening, the old ones speak more. Their voices cracked, their words slow, but full of knowledge passed down like a rope through generations. They speak of the hard winters, the starvations, the miracles, of the time wolves came too close to the village and how the men stood with torches in the snow, of a woman who gave birth during a storm and kept the child warm with stones from the fire. You listen, not because it passes the time, but because it strengthens something in you. Memory is a kind of armor. Knowing that others have suffered and survived before you makes your own pain feel less sharp, less isolating. Outside, the snow falls again. Not heavily, but steadily. It dusts the world like powdered sugar, deceptive in its softness. You know better now. Every flake carries weight, and weight is something you've learned to measure differently. Not just in your arms or back, but in your spirit. You no longer look for signs that winter is ending. You just keep moving. Because survival isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm, a heartbeat. One more breath, one more day, one more candle stub melted into a new wick. You've learned to stretch everything, not just food and fuel, but yourself. You stretch your patience, your tolerance, your hope. You stretch your ability to care for others when you can barely care for yourself. You stretch the stories you tell by firelight to keep children from asking where the bread is. And when someone knocks on your door, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger with frostbitten cheeks and a limp in his step, you let him in. Because in this world, no one survives winter alone. The snow hasn't stopped in 2 days. Thick, wet flakes pile against doors, muffle footsteps, silence voices. Even the birds seem to have disappeared. No distant crows, no wings. The world outside your home feels sealed in cotton, like you're caught in a snow globe someone forgot to shake. Inside, the candles burn low. You start rationing light now. Candles, after all, are not infinite. Tallow is precious, wax even more so. Some nights you don't even light them. You just sit in the dark, backs against the wall, listening to the wind howl like a starving animal. The flames you do use aren't just for seeing, they're for sanity. For reminding yourself you still exist. The air is filled with smoke and breath and a dozen small human smells: wool, sweat, wood, sickness. Someone's coughing more now. You pretend not to notice. That's what people do. Because noticing means acknowledging what might be coming. And when someone starts coughing in winter, really coughing, that dry, barking kind of cough, the chances of spring don't feel so certain anymore. Outside, the village has disappeared under the snow. Roofs sag, barns groan, chickens are silent, even the dogs have stopped barking. It's as if the world has gone underground. And maybe it has. Most people barely leave their homes now, except to check on neighbors or chop a little more wood. Roads have vanished. Paths are guessed at. You don't walk through the village. You trudge blindly like you're swimming through ice. You try not to think about the woods. Wolves are hungry this time of year, more desperate than usual. You've heard stories, always stories, of packs that circle villages at night, eyes gleaming in the dark like coins. The bold ones get close. You've seen tracks near the chicken coop once. You didn't tell the others. No point worrying them. But the axe is near the door now. The thing about winter in these times is that danger doesn't always come in obvious ways. It creeps in quietly, through a loose roof tile, a cracked bucket, a spoiled sack of barley. One small failure leads to another, and then the whole house starts to feel like it's crumbling. You patch the cracks. You tie cloth around the door to stop the draft. You stuff straw under the windows, but nothing ever quite fixes it. And yet, you endure. There's this thing people do in times like these. Something old, something stubborn. You start to create little rituals. Not religious necessarily, though those continue too, but human rituals. A certain way of folding the blankets, the order you hand out food, how you rub your hands before eating, how you place the logs in the fire, always in the same direction. These things, these small repetitive acts, become anchors. Little moments that remind you the world hasn't fully lost its shape. A child laughs, just once. A strange high sound in the dim quiet of the evening. He's playing with something, an old carved figure, probably handed down from someone long gone. He's making it march across the dirt floor, pretending it's a knight or a monster. You watch him silently and feel something shift in your chest. Not warmth, exactly, but maybe the memory of it. The oldest person in the house, your grandmother, maybe, begins to hum, a sound so low it barely registers at first. But then it grows. A melody with no words, something learned when she was a girl, and probably learned from someone older still. It's not a song meant for dancing or singing. It's a song for surviving, for holding still, for remembering who you are when everything else is cold. That night, sleep is shallow. You dream of bread, real bread, thick and warm and soft enough to tear with your fingers. Not the dry, dark stuff you've been eating, the bread made from acorn flour and desperation. You dream of apples, fresh ones, and cheese. And your hands smell like rosemary, for some reason, and there's heat behind your eyes when you wake. Someone stirs the fire back to life. Not much wood left, but enough. Just enough. You gather around it. The cold feels worse in the mornings, always. It sneaks into your joints, makes your spine ache, your teeth hurt. You press your fingers close to the flames until they sting. And then you go outside, because someone has to. You pull on the stiff wool cloak, wrap the scarf twice, shove your feet into boots that never fully dry. The door sticks from the frost, but you shove it open with your shoulder. The air outside hits like a wall. Sharp, flat, endless. The snow is higher than yesterday. It's over your knees now. You head toward the neighbor's house, because no one lives through this alone. You knock twice, like always. The answer is slow, a creak, a shuffle, a pale face peering from the darkness. They let you in, and the ritual continues. You share a little of your broth. They offer a piece of salt meat. You sit together in silence for a while, warming your hands. Nothing is said. It doesn't need to be. Survival isn't loud. It's quiet, repetitive. A whisper instead of a shout. And if you do it right, if you keep doing it, spring will come. Eventually. A thin layer of frost has crept along the inside walls now. You notice it in the corners first. Delicate, crystalline patterns, like tiny icy ferns climbing across the wood. Beautiful in a way, if you weren't already wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own, still shivering. Even the breath from your mouth comes out like steam, curling briefly before vanishing into the chill. The cold is deeper now. Not just on the surface. It seeps into your bones, settles into your joints, makes your skin crack at the knuckles. You've started sleeping in layers, tunic, cloak, even boots, if they aren't soaked through. Everyone smells the same, smoke, sweat, earth. But at this point, no one minds. That particular discomfort was left behind weeks ago. The food is getting stranger. At the start of winter, The root cellar was stocked. Carrots, turnips, dried beans, jars of pickled cabbage, and old onions hanging in braids. But now it's late winter, the coldest stretch. The cellar is nearly empty. A single jar of goose fat sits like a treasure in the corner. The carrots are soft, dark at the tips. The onions sprout green tails like tiny alien creatures. And you eat them anyway. Because what else can you do? The stew tonight is mostly water and herbs, with a few limp roots tossed in. You chew slowly, deliberately, to trick your body into thinking there's more. There's an art to stretching hunger, not just food, but the ritual of eating. Letting each spoonful linger, pausing between bites. You hand the last of the bowl to the youngest. That's just how it works. The chickens haven't laid in weeks. They huddle together in the dark, barely moving, feathers fluffed, eyes dull. You've stopped checking the coop every day. It's too disheartening. You need your energy for chopping wood, clearing snow, boiling whatever water you can carry from the half-frozen stream. Speaking of water, it's a full chore now. The stream is iced over, so you have to break it with a stick each morning, sometimes with a rock. You scoop slush into buckets, bring it back to melt by the fire. Drinking cold water makes your stomach cramp, but it's better than dehydration. You've learned the trick of letting it warm slightly in your hands before sipping. Clothes don't really dry anymore. Everything is in a state of dampness. The air is too cold, too heavy. So you hang your cloak near the fire and hope it's dry enough by morning not to freeze solid. You've stopped worrying about dirt or smell. The only real rule now is warmth. Even your tools have changed. The wooden bucket has split at the rim from frost. The axe handle is cracking. The blade has dulled, and you don't have a whetstone to sharpen it. You wrap the handle in old cloth, tie it with string, hope it holds. In another life, these would be chores. Annoying, maybe. But now they feel like sacred tasks. If the axe breaks, you don't get firewood. If you don't get firewood, you don't get fire. And if you don't get fire, you try not to finish that sentence. One morning, something shifts. You wake to quiet. But it's not the usual blanket of snow silence. This feels different. The wind is gone. The air feels lighter, almost fragile. You open the door and blink into the pale light. It's warmer. Not warm, just warmer. Enough that your breath isn't a cloud. Enough that the snow doesn't bite as hard. Could it be the beginning of the thaw? You hesitate to hope. Spring is still weeks away. Maybe months. But maybe, just maybe, the worst has passed. You step outside, boots crunching in crusted snow. The stream still runs sluggish under a crust of ice, but the sound of water is clearer now. A drip from the eaves catches your ear, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat returning after a long sleep. You find a patch of bare earth near the southern wall. Just a sliver, a muddy scrap where the sun hit hardest. It's ugly, wet, black, cold, but you kneel anyway and run your fingers through it, just to feel something that isn't frozen. You close your eyes. It's the first time in weeks you've touched soil. Your fingers tingle. Not from frostbite this time, but from something else, something older. A memory buried deep in your body, in your blood. That this ground, this frozen earth won't always be dead. That soon, seeds will go into it. That hands will dig again and things will grow. The chickens make a sound behind you, not their usual winter cluck. It's sharper, more awake. You turn and see one of them pecking around near the coop door, curious, moving. And in that moment, it all shifts just slightly. The air, the light, the sound of your own breath. Maybe it's not over yet. Maybe this story doesn't end in snow. The fire crackles a little brighter tonight. It's still not warm, not truly. But the shadows on the walls seem softer, the air less sharp. You wrap your hands around a bowl of thin gruel and sip slowly. Every sound in the house is magnified. A cough, a spoon scraping wood, the creak of beams overhead contracting after months of deep cold. And then it hits you. The quiet isn't so absolute anymore. There are distant sounds now. A drip from the roof, the faint trickle of running water outside. A bird, maybe, though it was brief, just enough to remind you there's a world beyond the walls, a world waking up again. But no one dares say the word spring. Not yet. In the medieval mind, the seasons weren't just weather, they were forces. Spiritual, physical, even political. Winter wasn't merely cold, it was a test. A trial by hunger, by darkness, by silence. And spring wasn't simply warmth, it was survival earned. It had to be proven. Still, people start to stir. The village is re-emerging. Doors open, smoke returns to chimneys, footprints trace old paths through melting snow. The familiar shape of your neighbor hauling buckets, the far-off clang of someone mending a tool. All of it feels like a forgotten song finding its rhythm again. You make your way to the commons. Your boots sink into slush. Your cloak drags wet against your legs. But you're outside, and that's enough. The air smells different. Less of smoke, more of mud. Life smells like rot first, always. That's the truth people forget. Before flowers and fruit and sun-warmed earth, there's the thaw, the decay. The scent of frozen death returning to the soil. At the well, a small group has gathered. Someone's brought a jug of weak ale, watery, sour, but warm. They pass it around like it's gold. And as it touches your lips, something shifts in your chest. A flicker of joy. Not the wild kind, not yet, but a rooted kind. Like an ember refusing to die out. An elder starts talking. No sermon, no grand speech, just a story. A memory from their youth. A winter worse than this one, if you can believe it. But they lived through it. And so did others. The story winds slowly, comfortably. Laughter bubbles up here and there. The kind that feels risky, like a muscle you haven't used in months. You notice a girl spinning thread. Her fingers are raw but practiced. She works as the elder speaks. That's another truth of medieval life. Stillness rarely meant idleness. Winter was brutal, but it was never silent inside these homes. There were always things to make. Cloth, candles, tools. Survival wasn't just waiting, it was doing. And with spring slowly returning, the doing increases. Someone's begun mending the fence around the goat pen. Another gathers bark for brewing. You spot a boy dragging a rusted plowshare from a shed, already dreaming of thawed fields. The soil isn't ready yet. It'll be weeks before anything can grow. But they're thinking ahead now. Because that's what hope looks like here. It's not poetic or dramatic. It's practical, measured. You don't shout it. You sharpen the blade. You mend the handle. You count your seeds in the candlelight and whisper prayers over each one. You return home and see your breath still fog the air, but less than before. You stir the ashes, add wood, not the last of it, but close. Enough to burn brightly for the night. You want that. A bright fire. You sit beside it, legs stretched, body aching. And that's when you notice the bruises on your shins. Deep purple from where you've knelt by the hearth each morning, feeding it life. A medieval winter doesn't pass without leaving its mark. Not just on your home, but on your body. Cracked hands, stiff backs, teeth worn from grinding too many hard grains. And the silence, oh, the silence leaves a mark too. Makes your voice sound strange when you speak aloud again, like it belongs to someone else. But that's the price, to see the crocus rise from the dirt. To watch the fields return to green. To bury the dead who didn't make it and honor them with bread and beer when the time comes. This isn't just the end of cold, it's the beginning of remembering what warmth means. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, someone might smile. The morning light is pale, but it lingers longer now. You stir beneath your rough wool blanket, feeling something you haven't felt in months. A slight warmth in your fingertips. It's faint, fleeting, but it's real. You lie still, letting your senses stretch into the world. There's the faint scent of damp wood, the far-off call of a raven, and beneath it all, the quiet creak of your house settling back into life after a season of holding its breath. It's time. Time to shake off the sleep that clung so tightly through winter's long reign. Time to open shutters and let in air that no longer bites. Time to sweep out the soot and dust, the remains of dried herbs, the straw dragged in on boots and cloaks. Every movement feels ceremonial. You're not just cleaning, you're shedding winter from your very skin. In the fields beyond your home, the earth is still dark and wet. You walk carefully across it, boots sinking into the thawed mud. It's too early to plant, but not too early to hope. The plow will come out soon, the oxen yoked, and the rhythm of the seasons will start again. For now, you kneel and press your fingers into the soil. It's soft, alive. And that's enough to send a quiet thrill through your spine. Others are outside now too. Children with runny noses chasing chickens, women washing linens in icy streams, men patching holes in thatch roofs. The village hums again, not loudly, but with a steady energy that had vanished during the bitterest weeks. Tools are sharpened, fences repaired, new candles dipped and hung to dry. These are not chores, they are declarations. We are still here, and yet danger still lingers. The food stores are low. Sacks of grain are nearly empty. There are fewer dried apples hanging from the rafters, fewer cured meats in the smokehouse. What's left must stretch until the first real harvest, which could be months away. You've counted every onion, every strip of fatback, every pinch of salt. Hunger doesn't disappear with the snow. It just becomes quieter, more patient. You hear coughing again. It's your neighbor's child, a rough, rattling sound that hasn't let up in days. No one says it out loud, but you all know what it means. Winter might be fading, but its ghosts are still with you. Illness doesn't wait for frost to end, and sometimes even the strongest don't recover once the cold takes its toll. So you do what you can. You bring over a little broth, thin but hot. You add a few dried herbs, sage, thyme, whatever you've got left. The mother thanks you with tired eyes. There's nothing more to say. You leave quietly, the way people do when death is still hovering nearby. At the edge of the village, near the old stone wall, a group has gathered. They're repairing the boundary, the low, moss-covered structure that marks where your land ends and the woods begin. You watch as stones are lifted, adjusted, placed back with care. This isn't just about property, it's about memory. This wall has seen plague, famine, fire, and every spring, someone rebuilds it. Tradition runs deep here, and nowhere is that more evident than in the rituals that welcome the changing season. Small fires lit on the hilltop, charcoal symbols painted above doors, bread baked in strange shapes, sun, serpent, seed. The priest says a prayer in Latin, but the people mutter older words under their breath, passed down from grandmothers long gone. Christianity on the surface, yes, but beneath it, something much older. You return home as dusk falls. The sky is streaked with soft blues and bruised purples. You light the hearth, slowly feeding it splinters and twigs, coaxing it like an old friend. The smoke rises clean now. The wood is drier, the air less damp. Your hands move without thought, stirring the pot, arranging the straw mattress, folding the shawl that belonged to your mother. And as the fire glows, you sit near it, letting the warmth soak into your bones. You think of those who didn't survive the winter, of the ones buried quietly in the frozen earth, of the spaces at the table that are now empty. And then you think of the living, of the children laughing outside, of the seedlings hidden beneath the soil, waiting for the sun to call them forth. Surviving the medieval winter wasn't just about enduring the cold. It was about remembering who you were beneath the layers of fear and frost. It was about holding on to stories, to names, to tiny rituals that stitched your spirit back together. It was about the fire inside, stubborn, flickering, but unyielding. Tomorrow, you'll rise earlier. The chores will be harder, the days longer. Hunger will still be close, but the light will keep growing, and so will you. The wind still speaks, but its voice has softened. It no longer howls through the cracks in your walls or whistles with icy teeth beneath your door. Now, it hums, a low, tired lullaby, like winter itself is exhaling. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole body, your entire memory, because in this final stretch, everything feels earned. You've made it. Not because you woke up one day and the trees were green again, but because you endured the slow thaw. The ice in your joints, the empty belly, the aching silence between church bells, all of it. You look at your hands now, calloused, cracked, strong. These are not the same hands that reached for firewood in the dark of December. These are survivors' hands. The village has changed too. You notice it in the small things, the tone of people's voices, the way they move more confidently across the hardening ground, the jokes that come a little more freely around the fire, the laughter that doesn't sound forced. Even the livestock seem lighter somehow, as if they too can feel the season turning. There's a sense of reverence in the air. Not religious, necessarily, but sacred nonetheless. Every spoonful of broth, every warm patch of sun, every early flower pushing through the snow-drenched earth, it all feels like a blessing. Not in the grand divine sense, but in the raw, human way. A gift, not guaranteed. The winter taught you something, not with words, but with weeks of silence and frost. It taught you patience, taught you how little you truly need, taught you to measure wealth not in coins or cloth, but in dry firewood and cured meat, in the steadiness of your neighbor's hand, in the moments of stillness when nothing creaks or coughs. There's a reckoning now, with time, with death, with the parts of yourself you had to bury just to keep going. Not everyone made it. You've said the names, whispered them over shared cups in open fields. Some were young, some were old. All were remembered, even the ones no one speaks of, especially them. But this isn't a story of loss. It's a story of emergence. The doors are opening, slowly, carefully. The first market day since the worst of it sees people wrapped in cloaks, faces pale but smiling. A bartered egg here, a mended boot there. The smell of baked bread drifting from a cart you forgot existed. Music, even clumsy, improvised notes played on a worn flute. It's not joy exactly. It's recognition. That life somehow has returned. You walk the muddy path beyond the chapel, past the place where snow once reached your knees. The sun is higher now, braver. And the world isn't just surviving anymore. It's waking. The birds sound different. Their songs more insistent. The trees look strange without their icy coats, almost embarrassed by their own bare branches. But even they, in their quiet way, are ready. At home, you begin to sweep out the soot for the final time. The hearth doesn't need to burn as hot. The smoke curls lazily, no longer desperate for warmth. You fold away your thickest wool. You air out the linens. You find a cracked dish you'd forgotten existed beneath a pile of dried straw and smile at its familiarity. These small rituals, repeated year after year, feel like a contract with the earth itself. You promise to remember. Not just the cold and the hunger, but the grit, the gratitude, the way your body knew how to bend without breaking, how your mind stayed sharp, even in the dark, how community became something you felt, not just something you named. No one really survives winter alone, not in this age. Before you sleep that night, you look at the ceiling, rougher, darkened with age. You hear nothing but the hush of spring's approach. No scratching rats, no coughing from the next room, no distant toll of a funeral bell. Just silence, pure and gentle. Your chest rises, falls, and for the first time in months, you don't brace for cold when you close your eyes. The fire has burned low, but not out. It never did. And outside, in the quiet breath of night, the first frog sings. A single note in the dark. Life, again.